Good morning. This week we are continuing through Proverbs. As we move into chapter 16 this week, we're going to continue what we've done with the last few chapters. Solomon has been dumping all of this advice, all of these sort of wise sayings, these little fragments of wisdom that don't really line up. They don't really have a common theme. They're just sort of as they flow through his mind, he writes them down. And so we're taking 4 or 5 and just looking at some of the more prominent ones inside each chapter and what they actually mean. So our first one is actually 2 verses. It's Proverbs 16, verses 2 and 3. All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. You've kind of been in this type of a situation before where maybe, right, where you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the thing you want to do is the right thing. That task that you have, the goal that you're setting for yourself, it's the right goal. And as you sort of move into doing it, something happens and it blows up in your face and it doesn't work. Or maybe you have like a special goal that you've been trying to achieve. It's a good one. And you keep pushing and you keep pushing, but it kind of feels like you aren't getting anywhere. It's the idea of what Solomon is talking about here in verses 2 and 3. That when we begin a task or we begin to move towards a goal, if we try to do it under our own power, it can be difficult or it can fail. But if we take the time and make sure that, number 1, the goal and task that we want to achieve is what God has in store for us, it's on the path that he has for us to live, and 2, that we commit to following the path that he lays out for us, then he will establish our plans. A good example of this idea is in the Old Testament. Moses and the Israelites, they're marching out of Egypt. They're wandering in the wilderness, and they come across a group of people called the Amalekites. Moses and the rest of the Israelites, they don't really want to fight the Amalekites, but the Amalekites, they're looking for war, and so they march out to fight them. And it's figured out that as long as Moses, the leader of the Israelites, keeps his staff held up to God and worship to him, the battle goes good for the Israelites. And anytime his arms get tired and he lowers his staff, the battle goes badly for the Israelites. So eventually, a couple of Moses' trusted advisors sit Moses down because his arms are so tired from holding them up, from praising God by holding his arms and his staff in the air, that they sit him down and they hold his arms up for him so that God would be with them through the battle and win the fight. In our lives and in the things that we choose to do day in and day out, if we dedicate those things to the Lord, if we seek to do his will in our lives, if we lift up our hands and worship to him in deference to his will and his way for our lives, our plans and our goals will always be successful. Because it's all about putting God first and making sure that the thing that you want to do, the goal that you want to achieve, is a goal that he has for you. Proverbs 16, verse 6. Through love and faithfulness, sin is atoned for. Through fear of the Lord, evil is avoided. Solomon here in this verse, there's 2 sort of major themes here. Themes that sort of play out mostly in the New Testament. Because nowhere does this verse make sense under the Mosaic law. Because under the Mosaic law, the thing that atones for sin is sacrifice. It's not love and faithfulness. Nowhere in the law does it say love and faithfulness is where our sins are find forgiveness or atonement. No, it's also not saying here that our love atones for sin. Us loving God does not fix our problem of sin. But it says love and faithfulness atone for sin. Through those things, sin is atoned for. Not ours. Solomon is talking about God's. God's love, God's faithfulness, his unending love for you and me, his unending faithfulness to us, even when we are unfaithful to him. Through that love, atonement for our sins enters the world. And by the very definition, if we fear the Lord, let's treat him with respect, seek to do his will and his way because he is our creator, he is God above all else. When we do those things, by very definition of doing those things, you're avoiding evil. Proverbs 16, verse 18. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Pride goes before the fall. It's another one of those proverbs that we've run into every once in a while that sort of become famous sayings in our world. Shakespeare himself, the playwright, wrote a whole play called Macbeth based off of this one proverb. The whole of the play of Macbeth is all about how prideful Macbeth is, and it ultimately ends up being Macbeth's downfall. Our pride will be our downfall. We're not called to be proud. God calls all believers not to pride, but to humility, to be humble, to help, to ask for help when life gets complicated, and we begin to take too much pride in our work and our own ability. Then we stop giving God the credit for the work that he does, and that will always ultimately lead to our downfall and our destruction. Our last verse is this: gracious words are honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Say good things to people. Last week we talked about how the importance of choosing our words carefully in the Facebook post I made of Proverbs 15. How it's important that the words that we say are the right ones and that we choose the words that we speak very carefully. This verse, sort of reflecting back on that idea, is all about the power of positive affirmations, of speaking gracious words or good words or kind words to people. The best way to build a person up who is down is not by fixing their problems for them. It's not by stepping into their lives and telling them what they're doing wrong, but it's with kind words. Because sometimes when you're down and you're low and the world seems to be against you and things just seem to be going your way, through kind words, the kind words of a stranger or a friend or a family member, they can be like honeycomb, sweet to your soul. They can bring healing to your life. They can be of great benefit. I know in the times in my life when life just seems to get me down and drag me down, the best thing for me are just those kind words that people can speak. People saying things to me to build me up, to give me hope, to help me feel like this isn't just the worst thing that's ever happened. As you go through this week, find someone to share a kind word with. Seek out someone who needs to hear some kindness and speak gracious words to them. Have a great rest of the week.